Hey, it's Chuck.
And I don't think he's going to throw the ball as much as he thinks he's going to throw the ball now that Chip Kelly's on board. And I'm happy about that. More quarterback.
The truth is, Ryan Day has made a change philosophically, but it's none of those.
You all know who wins. LSU is the drunkest fan base in the country.
And welcome into Chuck on Bucks. Appreciate you so much for joining me on a Thursday night. Bit of a test show, guys. We have got, as promised, our fiber internet, and fiber internet has been wired down to Chuck Eye Studios. So we'll see if it's possible to keep a healthy signal going all the way through today's show. No promises, but we're going to find out today. You guys can feel free to participate as much as you'd like. Please keep it family friendly. My mom likes to watch, and you don't want to be on Karen's bad side. She really hates that her name has become synonymous with that. Don't mention it if she comes in the chat. But you don't got to contribute financially if you want to get your stuff brought up. When I'm done with my segments, I usually go through the chat when I'm live, if you've never been to one of my live shows. And if there's anything interesting going on, we will get to it. But Big Ten Media Days, less than 2 weeks away, and I really can't wait. Like, this year is the first year the Big Ten is in Las Vegas for Media Days, which is already going to attract many more outlets. But the fact that Jeremiah Smith is going, he's crossed over now. He's not college football celebrity famous. He's national celebrity famous, and I cannot wait to see it. Similar to the Super Bowl, where you get all these journalists that don't generally cover football and go ask stupid questions. I feel like we're going to have some bozos trying to get a piece of JJ and our guy coming out of his shell. So that's going to be really interesting. But we are now just 3 weeks away from the start of fall camp. Once fall camp starts, just a month till the Texas game. That is now 44 days away from right now. Every year about this point, I start going through this internal struggle where I desperately want football to start, but I also don't want to wish the summer away. This season, I'm wishing the summer away. My wife keeps bothering me about a pool. This is like 4 summers in a row in my stall tactics. They're wearing thin on her. So we got to get some cold weather here soon. But we got some news today, buddy, and we'll see how far we go. I got a long list of things to hit on. I might have to cut it short and roll it into tomorrow. But another ridiculous comment about Ryan Day I got to get to. The best head coach in the country that gets the least amount of respect. A bombshell dropping about the settlement, and Ross BJORK looking quite a bit better, as well as some NIL deals that are getting rejected as they should. Some programs trying to game the system already, and they're getting blown back, just like we would hope if you're someone who's rooting for the settlement to work. Another shift in the Ohio State team rankings in the class of 2026. 2 potential Buckeye commits announcing tomorrow. We will talk about them. My impact freshman for 2025. I did this pre-spring. I want to do it pre-fall camp, and as well as some news about one of those freshmen, a huge accomplishment for one of them. And then questions for Ryan Day. So the other day, in the middle of a segment I was doing, I just stumbled upon something that I thought was a pretty good idea. And I thought, if you could ask Ryan Day one question and he had to tell you the truth, what would it be? What would you ask him? And some of you guys submitted those on that video right there. Some of you emailed them to me at juckonbucks@gmail, which feel free to email anytime there if you want to get a hold of me. But some awesome questions that you guys asked. So we will bring those up in a little bit. But let's go over those recruits who are announcing tomorrow at 6 p.m. We have got North Carolina offensive lineman, 6'6", 285-pound JB Shabazz, who is one of these guys whose rankings is kind of all over the place. There is an outlier. On3 has him as a top 10 tackle. Someone whose sophomore film wasn't great, but junior film looks really, really good. And the Buckeyes, one of his 3 finalists. And then at 8:30, edge rusher KJ Ford out of Duncanville in Texas. Number 118 overall player in the country. And we usually go live for those announcements. Now, that's usually when we don't know if he's going to go somewhere else. I got a feeling tomorrow we might know he's going to go somewhere else, and I don't want to waste our time if we do that. But we might be live as well on the show anyway, and if so, we'll pipe it in. The thing about KJ Ford, we know how fast these things can change. This one's been pretty wild. So he announced his final 3 last week, Ohio State, Texas A&M, and Florida. And today, all the buzz in the recruiting world is that he has made his decision. He tweeted out there's about to be a big surprise, as that decision sounds like it's coming from outside his final 3. Sounds like it's going to be Alabama. Now, That's not totally crazy. It felt like he wanted to go to Alabama for a long time throughout this recruiting cycle, but it didn't really look like he was going to be a take for them towards the end. They have since surged, and that puts the Buckeyes in a spot again, really needing another edge. They made a push for him. They upped the initial deal, and the question is, will they make a further push to try to make that happen tomorrow or not? We'll find out tomorrow at 8:30. I'm not incredibly, I don't want to say concerned. This is just, of all the guys that they've been after hard, he's not the one that I'm like hoping, like, man, I hope they go all in on this one. It's just not, that's not what it is for me, though. Yeah, they definitely need somebody. I just don't know. I don't know. I got mixed feelings about it because I'm not totally 100% sold on him being a future impact player. And I think that I really only want them to go all the way in on guys that are going to be impact players. But LSU signs the #1 defensive tackle in the country, an in-state kid. And remember, they had signed a 3-star, I think over the weekend show I was talking about. They signed a 3, they jumped ahead of Ohio State, then signed a 3-star and went behind Ohio State. Well, now since they have added the #1 player in the country out of Louisiana, they have jumped into position number 5, Alabama position number 6, and Ohio State dropped down to 7. Now, Oregon has some commitments that are going to be announcing pretty soon here. And when Oregon ends up getting a couple of guys I think they're going to get, they might jump in front of Ohio State at that time. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, the Bucs still have a really big fish out there in Braylon Womack. We'll see what happens. But there is a possibility that, they end up dropping down to 8 here. And then it's going to be a dogfight to make sure they don't finish 4th in the Big Ten with Michigan to the end. Because rest in peace, my comments, if that happened. My gosh, man. Anyway, let's get to the Ryan Day piece I was talking about. So I can never pass up these top 10 coaching lists. I've just got to get to them every time I see them. And PFF has done one. And PFF, what they say about Ryan Day in this just kind of blew me away. So #1 on their list is Kirby Smart, of course, always. #2 is Ryan Day. #3 is Dabo Swinney. #4 is Dan Lanning. #5, Marcus Freeman. #6, Steve Sarkisian. 7, Kalen DeBoer. 8, James Franklin. #9, the most hated coach in college football per the Juckeye poll. And #10, Kurt Cignetti. Kurt Cignetti. Now, some of those names on that list, like, Dan Lanning at #4, I know a lot of you are going to be like, that's insane. But it's Cignetti here that bothers me the most. This guy has been in the P4 for 1 year. Granted, a great year. And I'm just not comfortable with giving somebody a top 10 ranking after 1 year in the P4. Had 2 good years previously at James Madison. It just blows me away. And I got more thoughts on this entire list. Maybe we'll get to them at the end, but I want to get to what they said about Ryan Day. Ohio State rolled through the first ever 12-team field with ease. Despite continued struggles against Michigan, Day is one of college football's winningest coaches. His status on this list could go multiple ways depending on how things fare in 2025. If the Buckeyes can somehow go back-to-back, he could leapfrog Kirby. He better. Of course, if Ohio State falls off and either misses out on the playoff or loses a 5th straight to the Wolverines, they could plummet down the list along with emerging hot seat talk. Now, plummet implies several spots, and I dare you to drop Ryan Day below Dan Lanning, Marcus Freeman, Steve Sarkisian, or Kalen DeBoer. I mean, unless one of them wins a national championship, you could try to make that argument. It would be the wrong argument, but you could try. Now, what they would say is all those guys had more to overcome except for DeBoer. Day took over a Cadillac program. It was Urban's program. He didn't have to build anything. That would just look ridiculous. Ryan Day is a bona fide star in college football now, a bona fide superstar. As soon as he won that national championship, all of his near misses just became more accolades on that resume. And let's take a look at Ryan Day's resume through 6 years. 1 national championship, 2 runner-ups. 2 appearances, 4 out of 6 seasons in the postseason. That's pretty insane. 2 Big Ten championships, 70-10 record, 8-4 postseason record. That's the beauty of being able to run that gauntlet year one. bump that puppy up real quick. 24-9 versus ranked opponents, 15-8 versus the top 10, and a winning record in 7-6 against the top 5. Obviously, 1-4 against the rival. You can't see that. It's under the bottom of the graphic. But to build that kind of a resume in 6 years is really just insane. He's a culture-driven coach. He has a program that pumps productive NFL players into the league at huge numbers. And when we look at the worst that could happen for Ohio State, what do you consider to be the floor for Ohio State this year? Because I think the absolute floor is 9-3. And if that happens, they likely would have lost the rivalry game and likely missed the playoffs. Now, I'm really high on this team, much higher than the national media seems to be. I think their opinions will change after that Texas game. But if they were to go 9-3, and aside from Dabo, like, who else could come close to that resume, even if they won a national championship, to all those accomplishments after 6 years? A 1-year hiatus from the playoffs doesn't change Ryan Day's resume, what it would look like through 7 years. It would be ridiculous. And in addition to that, looking at the 2026 roster at Ohio State, which, if we're just looking objectively, 2026 looks better than 2025, because now you've got all these guys who are new this year are going to be experienced. You're not losing a ton of seniors coming off of this. There's a lot of young guys that are playing, and we'll get into some of those freshmen soon. But Urban Meyer on his podcast said Dan Lanning is a top 2 or 3 coach in college football, which had me really interested. Would love to see his list. So, interesting talking point. I think it's absurd. I think Ryan Day gets the littlest respect out of all these guys. Like, nobody talked about Ryan Day like they talk about Dan Lanning, like they talk about Marcus Freeman, like they talk about Sark. Nobody talked about him on the way up like that. And now that he's up at the top, we're already dismissing him and trying to toss him out after if he has one bad year. Bad would be 9-3. It blows my mind, man. I don't understand what it is about this guy that he gets no respect, but it is very clear. And I'm looking at it objectively. This is not a homer take. It's just how it is. But let's get into some of these younger guys. Take a look at Riley Pettijohn, freshman linebacker Riley Pettijohn out of Texas, freshman sensation. He had a birthday a couple days ago. His mom posted this. He has gained quite a bit of mass since he's been in Columbus. Now, you know he's got instincts. He's a speed demon. He's a playmaker. He's a finisher. Interesting, though, that birthday, not his 18th birthday, or not his 19th birthday, his 18th birthday. Like, this kid should be in high school, and just one of many freshmen that I think are going to see the field this year. I like a ton about the class of 2025, and the timing for that class is just perfect for early playing time. A class full of impact players. Riley, definitely a top of the board guy who finished right exactly at, I think, like 101 or something on the composite. Number 6 linebacker. I expect when he heads to the NFL, he will be not the number 6 linebacker drafted, but closer to number 1. But some of these freshmen, I think, are going to introduce themselves early. And I really do love years like this 25 season we got coming up, where you lose a big senior class. There's always a little butterflies, right? There's a little more butterflies as a fan because you don't know quite to expect at a lot of spots, which adds to the excitement. But when this happens, we also get to see guys who maybe were capable of starting the prior year and waited their turn, though that's increasingly more rare due to the transfer portal. But guys like Kenyatta Jackson, who could have started all year, guys like Caden Curry, guys like Brandon Innes, who I can't wait to see BI out there. He looks so good in the footage that keeps dropping out of him, working out at camps and stuff. Down in Miami, he was working out, him and Carnell Tate with some NFL wide receivers. My gosh, does he just look so much quicker? He looks leaner. This guy's ready to explode. But we also get to see the younger guys that we might not see in a different season like last year. We wouldn't have seen a lot of these freshmen last year because of all the older guys. Jeremiah Smith on a different planet. Edric Houston, they couldn't say no to him, worked his way into some playing time. Jalen McClain a little bit. This year, I think we're going to see more. And I was discussing this heading into the spring. Who would be the impact freshman? As in the guys who would be taking real snaps in real games, not just against the cream puffs. And this doesn't necessarily mean like the most talented, but maybe just the further along, but it's also about their position group as well. But at the top of my list heading into the spring was Bo Jackson, who I personally think is the most talented, just raw talent as a running back, the most talented running back in that room, he's obviously ready. And my prediction before spring was Bo Jackson would lead the team in rushing multiple games this year. I certainly stand by that. In fact, I've dug in even harder. But the difference is heading into spring, I was not nearly as high on CJ Donaldson as I was heading out of the spring. Coming out of the spring, I feel way better about CJ Donaldson. Just watching CJ Donaldson over the last couple of years at West Virginia, and granted, I didn't watch West Virginia a ton, but I was familiar with him and his game, and obviously watched a lot of his film when he transferred to Ohio State. At 240, this dude moved nothing like the guy we saw in the spring game. Now at a svelte 225, he's a long strider, he's powerful, and he looks like he's got, like we see so many transfers coming to Ohio State. He's just like a career reinvigoration. And I think he's going to be a lot better than I thought he was going to be originally. So that's great. My thought on Bo was that he was going to end up eating some of those snaps. For instance, it would be like more a split where Peoples would get your lion's share, and then that second half of a 1-2 punch would actually be more like a split between Donaldson and Bo in the second half of the year and moving on from there. But I still think that might happen, but it's not going to be because CJ Donaldson isn't that good. CJ is going to be really good, in my opinion. It's just that Bo is just that awesome. Bo is that unique. Bo is a budding superstar. He's big. He's strong. He's hard to bring down. He has one cut and home run ability, and he's incredibly mature. And it is pretty clear the way that Coach Locke was talking about him over the spring, that it kind of similar to the way James Laurinaitis was talking about Peyton Pierce. They just can't cover up how they feel about him, even if they're trying to. So really excited about that. Number 2 on my list, Jarquez Carter. Jarquez Carter walked into that defensive line room out of high school, a physical monster with freakish natural strength. And just to put this into perspective, on June 23rd at the Woody, they did bench press reps, 225 reps on the bench. And last year, Donovan Jackson, a senior 300-pound offensive lineman, grown man, who's now off to the NFL, led the team with 32 reps. That's incredible. 2 weeks ago on June 23rd, 18-year-old freshman Jarquez Carter now leads this 25 team with 32 reps. That's bananas. This guy's going to break strength records at Ohio State by the time he leaves. And the funny thing is, I didn't know anything about this crazy strength just watching his film coming out of high school. I just saw all the traits that translated on the football field, because physical strength doesn't always translate. With him, it definitely does. Incredible, and so motor, violent hands, a natural understanding of leverage and angles. Needed to get a little bigger, and he has. He's added some weight, and ultimately, I think this kid at some point in his career at Ohio State is going to be someone we look at and just like, yep, that position's solidified. We got Carter there. This is the year that I think that he starts to build that, and we're going to see right off the rip that he's got it. I really do believe that. In front of him right now, obviously Edric is starting. Then you got Ty Malone and Jason Moore battling it out for that second spot there. So 2 guys solidly in front of him in that 2 deep. We'll see how fast he can move up that ladder and how much he can get an opportunity to show it. And then, of course, we've got Devin Sanchez, and the question is not, if we're going to see Devin, it's how much we're going to see Devin. He's just too good to keep off the field. He's too mature to keep off the field. How does it look? We've talked about how you move it around best to get Devin in there. What is the best option? And we've talked about different combinations. Most of those combinations are either we move IGB or we move Jermaine down and Lorenzo Styles gets kicked out in that situation. And then you move Devin in to play corner. But I got to say, and maybe this is Ohio kid bias, but the further this gets along, like the more I'm feeling confident about Lorenzo Styles. Let's not forget, Lorenzo Styles, while he has not looked like it yet on the football field, is a pretty crazy athlete. And I think a lot of why we haven't seen that on the field yet is because he's just not been comfortable. In the spring game, he looked a lot more comfortable. Now, last year in the athletic testing, Lorenzo Styles put himself in the top 10 in 5 different categories of the 12 tests that they run. And for comparison, Sonny Styles was only on 3 of those boards. So we know that he's a very good, versatile athlete. Can he play like it? In the spring game, it was the first time that I saw him, and I started thinking, like, this could actually work really well. Lorenzo Styles might just surprise the heck out of us. So at any rate, I don't know what you do, but there's no way you waste a year of Devin Sanchez sitting on the bench. That's not happening. He's just too good. So Devin Sanchez, Bo Jackson, Jarquez Carter, the 3 guys that I think will be most impactful from that 2025 class, year 1. But there are some guys I think will be playing a lot more than just cream puff games and garbage time snaps. And that starts with the birthday boy, Riley Pettijohn, who in previous years, we would just be going down this depth chart and saying, all right, well, you got Sonny and Arvell. Peyton Pierce is the clear number 3. So what's the best Riley can do right now is 4. And that doesn't provide a ton of opportunity. But now we got to factor in, we got a defensive coordinator who gets very versatile with what he does with linebackers. And that's going to affect Sonny, Arvell, Riley, a crazy talent. And that opens up more opportunities for him potentially. We also have no idea about Stover. I know a lot of people just want to kind of write him off and bypass him, but he's up to 227. He is a pretty good athlete, really, really fast. Prior to the spring game, a lot of people were writing off Peyton Pierce, and that would have been a big mistake as well. A lot of people thought that Riley would walk in and fly right over Peyton Pierce. So, I don't want to just write off Stover like that because I don't know. I haven't heard much about him at all, but we will see. I think we'll get a better feel of that coming out of camp. Quincy Porter, 5-star wide receiver out of Bergen Catholic in New Jersey. We know he's got the goods, right? He's got the goods for sure. Does he got enough to get on the field in Big Ten games when he's got studs ahead of him like Bryson Rodgers and Mylan Graham? I think he does, and I think he's going to play a decent amount of snaps. When we look at Carnell Tate's freshman year, we're obviously not going to compare Quincy Porter to Jeremiah's freshman year, but going back 2 years, I think we had 23 receptions from Carnell, which is a lot for a freshman at Ohio State. Can Quincy do something like that? I think he can. And when we look at safety, you obviously got Caleb, and then you have McLean and Hartford. And I thought that McLean, who kind of ended the year ahead of Hartford, was going to walk into spring ahead of Hartford, and that's not what happened. We came into spring with Hartford running with the ones. Hartford always been fast. He looks way bigger. He's a hammer, and he likes to play like a hammer. The question is there room for Fahim Delane to get in there at all? Fahim Delane is a dog. The guy's going to be really good. It's just a matter of when. And that's a pretty big question now. I don't know if things have changed now that Hartford seems to be playing so much better. Pre-spring, I thought we'd see Fahim, I think, a little more than we will now. But hope I'm wrong because I'd love to see him out there. And then we got Zion Grady, who it looked like he was almost guaranteed to see meaningful snaps when we heard Ryan Day bring him up by name, unsolicited, at one of his press conferences during the spring. But now there's another big dog into the fray. That was before Bo Atkinson was brought in. So there's now another mouth to feed. And you've got Kenyatta Jackson, Caden Curry, and Logan George, and Bo Atkinson, and CJ Hicks, who are all older guys. And in theory, it makes it harder for Zion Grady to see the field. Or does he make them play him like Edric Houston did last year? A lot of old mouths to feed, but he is a young dog. And I'm really clueless as to how this shakes out. When we look at that depth chart there, I just don't know. I just don't know who's going to be at the top of the chart, how this rotation is going to work. My initial thought is Kenyatta and Bo Atkinson. That could be way off. Obviously, what we saw out of Bo Atkinson was a heater at the end of the year at North Carolina. Is he someone who has turned a page and he's just getting better and better? Or was that maybe the out of character and he falls back down to the mean that he was before that? We don't know. Going to be fun to see. One more note, and I don't think we're going to see a ton of playing time out of this guy, but when we look at the tight end room, which has never felt better with Max Clare, Angelani, Will Kazmarek, Bennett Christian, Max LeBlanc, and the 2 freshmen, Nate Roberts and Brody Lennon, you got 4 ready-to-play proven guys in Max Clare, Kaz, Jelani, and Bennett Christian. I think Nate Roberts is ready to play in some situations, and I think they're going to get him some work this year because I think next year is a big year for him. Now, Brody may need a couple years. I'm huge on Brody. I think pound for pound, Brody's one of the better athletes in this class. He's pretty ridiculous. The dude is as fast as Bo Jackson. So that's my list of freshmen that we can look forward to seeing some playing time to varying degrees here. Top of the board, Jackson, Carter, and Sanchez playing the most, followed by Riley Pettijohn, Zion Grady, Quincy Porter, Fahim Delane, and a little bit of Nate Roberts. Now, let's all please like the show for a Juck on Bucks prime time, but I've got an ultimate sleeper for you before I move on to the next segment. Now, if you watched the show at all last year about this time, you might remember there's a guy that I'm really like, I'm just so enamored with this kid. I think a lot of it has to do with his personality, his humility, his drive, but I really legitimately see it on the film as well. And that's Isaiah West, a 3-star running back who I fully believe will exit camp even after missing spring as the number 4 back. He was the number 733rd player in the class, which I feel was a total whiff. I think he's going to be a fan favorite at some point in his career. I think he's an absolute dog. And I think that we will see him out there. And people, even some who follow recruiting, are going to be like, who the heck is that? That's Isaiah West. So that is my deep sleeper here. Now, let's get to the settlement. There's been a pretty big development here in the settlement. And before we talk about that, I want to talk about real quick a couple of Big 12 coaches. They just had their media day, and a couple guys made a few comments. So Arizona State head coach Kenny Dillingham said, you're seeing a lot of people lie and promise it's all fake. And then he said, we don't know the rules, but who knows what Deloitte is going to clear until there is clarity. You're living in limbo. Now, that's an interesting statement. Deloitte is obviously that's the clearinghouse, and that has to do with NIL, which doesn't really have anything to do with Kenny Dillingham, so he shouldn't be too concerned about it. At least he should know that that's not really his department. Cincinnati head coach Scott Satterfield said, I don't understand what rules everybody's playing under. The whole point of this was for us all to be playing by the same rules, but we're not, particularly this past spring when everybody was front-loading deals where others are having to spend their revenue share. Now, what Satterfield is talking about is you could pay off any players that you owed future money to, and it wouldn't count against your cap as long as you did it before the settlement closed, and that was June 6th, which means everybody on the team, as we are now entering the revenue sharing, let's sit down and talk at whatever we owe you in 25. We're going to pay you that now so that we can make sure we get you all your money. Because when we look at a team like Ohio State, well, they had deals with guys in 25, right? What if those deals exceeded the salary cap? Well, do you want those kids to get screwed out of their money? Because Ohio State can't pay them and go over the salary cap. So Satterfield trying to make this sound nefarious. This is not nefarious at all. This is how you made sure that guys across the country who were owed their monies in 25 get their money, and the schools weren't coming in and saying, look, I can't pay you because it'll put me over the salary cap. Well, what would that have caused? It would have caused chaos, because you say that to, I don't know how many kids on your team, maybe the guy's a little lower on your priority list, that you can't pay him what you told him you were paying him. And then what do we have? We got a bunch of kids going into the transfer portal, and it causes a bunch more instability. That's not what you wanted. So you allowed that to happen. Now, the difference here is, and this is where a lot of people got this misconstrued, is that ended as soon as the settlement ended. The settlement, the judge said, okay, done. We're done. June 6th. All these deals we've seen from June 6th, none of those were grandfathered in for that rule that we're just talking about here. All those deals, those are either going towards the salary cap, or they're future NIL deals, or they're schools who don't intend to play by the rules. But we got some good news on that front. But first, Joey McGuire, the head coach of Texas Tech. Now, everybody knows what's going on at Texas Tech. They got a billionaire booster who has come in, invested a boatload of money, and he has bought up everybody they wanted in the transfer portal. Now they got Felix Ojo, etc. And I really like Joey McGuire. I think he's a really fun coach, and he's kind of a fun coach to be in this situation. But for starters, at Big 12 Media Days, he was talking about Brian Kelly talking about the Big 10 SEC Challenge and saying, I'd like to play the SEC. I want to play LSU. Let's settle it on the field, which is funny because nobody was talking about the Big 12 and the SEC and the Big 10. That was a Big 10 SEC thing. But then he goes on to lecture the rest of the conference saying that we have to recruit at this level if we're going to continue to be in the same conversation as the SEC and the Big 10. We as a conference got to commit to it. We've committed to that at Texas Tech. We eliminated people who said, well, you can't do that there. Can you imagine the stones on this guy? This guy's got a billionaire who walked in and started funding everything in his program. And he is looking at teams like Iowa, Kansas State, and Cincinnati and saying, this is how we got to recruit. That's some serious stones. But let's get to the big news about the settlement. As 2 days ago, reports started to leak out about the clearinghouse and what's kind of been going on so far. Now, the clearinghouse has been open, and they told us originally that the clearinghouse, when you submitted a deal, it was going to take like 1 day in most cases to get that deal back. Well, there's been a lot of delays. Deals being submitted and still haven't been approved for 2 weeks. Now, the clearinghouse came out and made some statements. It turns out 80 deals have been denied so far. Most of those deals have been deals that we'll get to that in a second. The delay is basically because you've got a ton of deals that these collectives are trying to submit that they know aren't going to go through. And they came out with a memo today. And the memo is from the CSC, which is the enforcement wing. And the statement that they said in the memo said, basically for the schools to quit sending stupid deals that they know aren't going to get approved. And essentially what the schools were doing is they were saying, okay, we're going to take the NIL collective, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to host events, and at these events, we're going to hire the athletes to make appearances and pictures and autographs and hawk our collective merchandise. Well, the CSC said, obviously, this is not allowed. An NIL collective's sole existence is to pay players. If the NIL collective is hosting an event, it's raising money to pay players. Like, that's the whole thing there. And that is clearly against the rules. It's not a business. It's not selling goods or services. And that was made very clear in the verbiage in the House settlement that this was not, you couldn't do this. But they're submitting all these deals. Now, what's it doing? It's bogging down the whole system. Now, if a grocery store wants to hold that same event, have a bunch of players come, make an appearance, pay them, that's fine. An apparel company wants them to sell their merchandise and pay them to do it, that's fine. But an NIL collective cannot do that. An NIL collective can, they said and reiterated, act as a player's broker, meaning the NIL collective could take the money from the grocery store and, like we've talked about before, open-ended deals, send them the players and then pay the players. And that's the direction I think most of the smart schools will go here. But the NIL collective cannot say themselves, all right, we're going to hold 50 events and all the players on our roster are going to come. We want all the fans to come out. They're going to take pictures and we're going to pay them $2,000 each. So that was the first we've heard from the CSC, was basically them reprimanding the schools about this. Now, many are seeing this roll out, these deals coming out and saying, this is a disaster. I told you it was going to be a disaster. I was right. And basically, when you're changing something this big, it's always going to be a cluster in the beginning. But to make matters worse here, the CSC, which is the enforcement wing, was tied up in court and still is with the plaintiff lawyers from the House settlement, and they're figuring out rules for cap circumvention. So they're still figuring out rules and punishments for people who break the rules here. So we've got the new system taking place, and we don't have the enforcement wing enforcing rules yet, which is a very, very poor setup, no doubt. Then you got all the people who've been telling us from the very beginning that this thing is going to get blown to smithereens, piling on. It's going to be an absolute disaster. As soon as it goes to court, it's going to be blown up. Well, that is obviously possible. But what we've always heard from everybody who supports this is step one. Step one was getting this passed. What's step two? Step two is we need help from Congress. The same thing Ross Bjork said when he had his press conference. And my standpoint was, how do we know that there isn't some wink, wink, nod, nod deal between all these very powerful administrators at these colleges, which are very, very powerful, and their buddies in Congress that, okay, get this legislation passed and then we're going to help you out. Well, guess what just happened? The SCORE Act has been introduced to Congress, and it is a bipartisan bill that essentially aims to codify all of this in law. Essentially, this is step two. This is step two, and we did not, even those of us who thought that this would be, something good, which I'm included in that. I think that I maybe thought this might happen in a year or two, and that might have been wishful thinking. The fact that this happened 2 weeks later basically tells us that, yes, there was absolutely wink, wink, nod, nods. But here's the biggest part about this. It's bipartisan. We thought originally that because Republicans were originally talking about doing this, that this was going to be something that was going to be hard to get through. But it's bipartisan. It's sponsored by both Republicans and Democrats. And it codifies all this into law, which means all these wise guys that have been sitting here telling us, as soon as this gets sued, it's going to get blown all to smithereens, are about to look like real fools. And Tennessee and Michigan, who came up with state laws to try to bypass this, this bill totally preempts everything that they've done at a state level, throws it out. It basically protects them from getting sued for any of this. And it means that the CSC, the enforcement wing, can basically go and police this as it's written up, and nobody can do anything about it. So you're not following the rules, you're going to get hammered, and their stupid lawsuits mean nothing. So, like I said 2 weeks ago, I don't think Ohio State's the dummy in the room. Turns out they were not the dummy in the room. It's the people who are going rogue that are going to end up looking like the dummies in the room, in my opinion, because I think this thing is going to pass, and they are going to get some real big punishments from this CSC in the end. They're not going to lose the players. If there are guys that are, they're going to be able to keep the players. They're not going to lose money from their $20 million in the following year. But this is looking on the up and up for guys like Ross Bjork, who have backed this from the beginning. Now, I have got to get to these questions that you guys submitted, because you've got some bangers. So to set this up, the other day I was doing a segment and I said, that's a good question. I'd love to ask Ryan Day that if he had to be totally honest with me. And then I was thinking that would be a fun idea for a segment. So I asked you guys to submit questions, and these questions are questions that you would like to ask Ryan Day if he had to be 100% truthful with you. And we will start with what really happened in the conversations after the Oregon game. So Ohio State goes out to Autzen Stadium. After the game, we see maybe a 5-minute press conference from Chip Kelly and a 5-minute press conference from Jim Knowles. And then normally we hear from the coaches on Tuesday. Well, they had a bye week, or improvement week, as they were calling it that week. And a lot of the Ohio State media kept repeating that. It was driving me nuts. But we did not get to hear from Ryan Day until the following Tuesday, a week after that game, as we were heading into the Nebraska game. And he comes into that press conference and he's telling everybody there's a lot of changes. And basically, like, everything the fans saw that everybody was so furious about, there have been a lot of changes and it's been addressed. And we were curious to see what he was going to say. He could have just said, it was a bad game, we're staying the course. But no, he said there's a ton of changes coming. You probably won't see them, but a lot of changes. And this is also probably what Jim Knowles' girlfriend was talking about when she said Ryan Day was breathing down his neck. But this is definitely one that I would like to hear as well. Love to hear how that conversation went. Second question, was it discussed during that game to pull Denzel Burke or not? Denzel obviously had a really rough game, looked like he was shaken, maybe mentally. And did they ever discuss pulling him? Next question, Dan Lanning and the 12-man penalty. The 12-man on the field penalty that Dan Lanning pulled, and then went on a little media tour afterwards, smirking like it was some genius move, and everybody calling him a genius and what a genius move it was. Got a rule changed, which generally means, you pulled a good one if they got to change a rule. How much did that bother him after losing a game and people pointing to that genius move for them winning the game? Next, when there was an open position after Parker Fleming left, and James Laurinaitis was sitting there, right? James Laurinaitis was the obvious candidate if you were going to hire a linebackers coach, but you could have gone a couple of different ways. And at the time we were discussing maybe there was an option instead of hiring a linebacker coach, he was going to hire another defensive line coach who would essentially be the heir apparent to Larry Johnson, but not just like a GA, like a full-time coach. And that's how you could get away with having someone wait in the wings for that. Someone like a big name. Jason Taylor was getting talked about a lot. So that was a big thing people were discussing. Or would you potentially hire another special teams coach? He ends up going with James Laurinaitis. That question was there, what were you considering at the time? Or was it always going to be James and you were just waiting it out a little bit? But that is a good one as well. Going back to the class of 2021, there was a very highly ranked quarterback out of IMG named JJ McCarthy who really wanted to be an Ohio State Buckeye. Ryan, do you regret taking Kyle McCord over JJ McCarthy? And that one goes deep because you could kind of say JJ McCarthy was a lot of the catalyst to a lot of the stuff that happened up there. So that's an interesting one. And of course, we've got a lot about that game and their stuff coming up here. In 2023, Devin Brown, Kyle McCord have their battle. And coming into the season, Ryan Day said that they were essentially going to be splitting snaps. He didn't have a starter, right? Well, they come in and Devin doesn't get like any of the snaps. So that was a really weird thing to say. Was it the intention to give Devin none of the snaps? Was it, what was the real story behind that? I get what the question is. I'm having a hard time explaining it. Then, of course, we got the Carson Hinsman podcast, which the Carson Hinsman, he gives the podcast. In that podcast, he says, leading up to the Cotton Bowl, they weren't really practicing. They were just doing walkthroughs. He also says offensive linemen don't really get paid anything. And whoever hosted that podcast, it got pulled down like a day later. And then we roll into the Cotton Bowl. Carson Hinsman is not going to be starting in the Cotton Bowl. And it was because he was having bad snaps. So you start Matthew Jones, the right guard at center. He had never done that before. And you bring in Enoch Vamahi, play the entire game with Enoch as a swinging gate. Matthew Jones can't make the calls, an aggressive defensive line. And you never put Carson Hinsman in, who didn't have a great year, but certainly knew the calls and it would have been an upgrade. What was the real story there? Why did you stick with that the whole game? Now, 2024 Michigan, this one got the most questions from you guys. Who was calling the plays? Is there a part of you that wants to prove that you can beat Michigan physically, which obviously that was a big topic of discussion for a long time. Why didn't you change the game plan at halftime? Who is the recruiting miss that pains you the most in your whole career? Do you regret the Lou Holtz statement? That was a good one. Do you think Ryan Day regrets that? I would say he probably regrets that. I don't know. I mean, I think I like the sentiment, right? He was setting that. He used Lou Holtz to set up, we're a tough team. That was the point. We're a tough team. And obviously he's heard that criticism from a ton of people that they weren't a tough team. That was just how he could use that to bring that to the limelight. As it turns out, looking back at it, I would imagine he regrets not what he said, not even raising his voice, but that it was Lou Holtz that was the catalyst to that. How about this? How irritated were you with Ross Bjork's $20 million comment? Now, I know he was irritated with this because after we won the national championship, he sat up there literally at the victory press conference the next day and brought that narrative up and how much it bothered him. So definitely putting that number out there, no bueno. I wonder what the conversation, I bet Ross apologized to him for that. Man, I'm sorry. All right. Based on all the excellent teams you have played as a head coach, how good was 2020 Alabama? That's for me. I think that 2020 Bama team, like, I don't have any bad feelings about losing that national championship game. because that team would have just smoked everybody that year. I think that team was so good, but I would love to hear from him as a head coach who's played so many good teams, how good that team was. When you look at the landscape now of college football with teams offering so much to freshmen, do you feel like there are some programs who are attempting to go rogue? Of course, we've been talking about that a ton lately, and it would be cool to hear Ryan Day's opinion on that. Do you personally think this settlement holds? And is this the system you want moving forward, or would you prefer it get blown up and there's a different system? Be very interesting to hear that. Would you have preferred Ross Bjork stayed out of this? I thought that was a really good question. Ross Bjork obviously dove headfirst into this, wants to be part of it from the ground floor. Now, if the SCORE Act comes through, Ross has got Ohio State in a really good spot. And I think that's fantastic. Obviously, Ross rolled the dice being involved in this. And like I said, when I first talked about it, there are a lot of people here, very prominent college leaders, who are going to have a lot of egg on their face if this just gets blown up immediately. You know, they're going to look really foolish. In addition to that, they're going to have set their football team back. And at a place like Ohio State, kind of important for an AD to not set the football team back. So that's going to make him a very hated figure. So he rolled the dice here. And my whole contention from the beginning was, I don't think he's rolling the dice unless he's really, really, really sure that they have got some assistance coming from Congress. As it turns out, looks like Ross knew they were. So anyway, do you feel like you're living in an alternative universe, that there are fans of your rival who actually believe you hired a private eye to monitor their program? Connor Stalions claims that Ohio State was stealing Michigan's signals and that they needed to do what they did to catch up. What is your response to that? 2024, Ohio State, Michigan. Will Howard takes a hit and goes out. Do you think Will was concussed after that hit? Do you think you made the right choice bringing Will back in after that hit? Is a concussed Will Howard better than frantic Devin Brown in the biggest game of the year? All fair questions. Why didn't you fire Tony Alford when things were souring instead of giving him the opportunity to screw you over? And which one hurt more? Tony Alford going to Michigan the way he did during spring, or Jim Knowles? And what did you think of Jim Knowles asking for a raise during a national championship run and saying, I didn't want to distract everyone after the season, so that's why I wanted to ask before the season was over, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. This was a good one here. Did moving on from Corey Dennis cause any friction between you and the Meyer family? You guys are great, man. These are some excellent questions. I would love to know these. Did you postpone the Corey Dennis situation for a long period of time? Maybe kick the can down the road. Like, you know, sometimes when it's an awkward situation, you want to do that. You're inclined to do that. That was a good one. What does Tyler Bowen do differently that is creating so much energy with offensive line recruiting? What is the worst meal you've ever had at a recruit's house? That's a good one too. How about this? How awkward are those on-field pregame conversations with another coach, the opposing coach, when it's a coach like Harbaugh or Sherrone Moore, and it's a game like that, and you got to go midfield, shake hands, make small talk? That's got to be so awkward. Another good one. And our last question, what were Derek and Kyle McCord's exact demands when they came into the office the day before Kyle McCord entered the transfer portal? What were those demands? We know that he asked for more money, and it probably seemed like Ryan Day was, you know, I'd like to ask one more. Does he regret any of the handling of Kyle McCord on the sideline? Now, I remember looking that year, and we just remember, and I remember saying after the year, like, it was just clear that those two weren't good working together. They didn't have a good working relationship. It wasn't whatever, it was just missing. It wasn't getting through. Maybe a different coaching style, that like this kid needed something different. But Day had so much frustration, and you could see it in the way he talked to Kyle coming off the sidelines. And I wonder if he regrets how that all went down. That would be interesting to talk about it. So those are your questions. Those were awesome, guys. I really appreciate that. So now I will pull up some of your questions, including we'll start with some super chats here. Waxman, thank you for the $2, buddy. Waxman says, thanks for what you do, Juck. Well, thank you. I appreciate you guys for watching the show, tuning in with me. No notice tonight, so you guys are the best, the ones that popped on here without giving you any notice. I'll just give you notice now that since KJ Ford announces tomorrow, we will come on here tomorrow. He'll announce at 8:30. Now, you know the new trend, right, is to be very fashionably late on these things. So he comes on at 8:30, and we'll go ahead and come on, and we will carry that. Now, I don't know if it's going to be positive news, but we'll carry that, and we'll also already have the 6 o'clock decision from JB Shabazz to discuss. So we'll know what his decision is, and I guess we'll just go ahead and plan for 8. We'll plan at 8 tomorrow. But I appreciate you, Wax, man. Donnie B, what's up, brother? $4.99. Thanks, buddy. Hey, Chuck, thanks for being the man, you handsome devil. Handsome thing. You sound like Karen. You sound like my mom. She says to me, honey, but why does it have to be Karen? It's just what it is, Mom. I don't know. But why Karen? Poor mom. She hates the Karen stuff. Oh, man. Lexis Tito says, what was his thinking with Will's concussion, allegedly, and trust with Devin? Yeah, we had that one. Woody's. There we go. Do you use beard dye? Now, Mrs. Day answered this. Nina Day said no. Nina Day said no. I believe her. Brandon says, listening to the podcast today on the defensive line recruiting, very deep and unbiased. Thanks, buddy. You know, I got a lot of blowback from that, and I knew I would. And that's okay. I tried to come at it as fair as I could, and I feel like I did a good job. I don't, like I said, that was my second take. I honestly, I did a 55-minute episode, and the first one, it just, I don't feel like it was, I feel like there was some bias in the first one, just to be blunt. So I did it again. I did it a second time to try to make sure that it didn't come out like that, but I appreciate it, buddy. Mostly I got a lot of positive comments. Stephanie does not think Day had any trust in any of the quarterbacks except for Howard. I totally agree, Stephanie. And I was rooting for Devin. I was really happy, and I'll always be happy for him that he was able to come in before halftime of that Michigan State game and throw that legendary touchdown pass to Jeremiah. Right? That touchdown pass was amazing. Pictures of that touchdown will remain in Ohio State lore forever. And that gets to be Devin's contribution to a national championship. Say whatever you want about him as a quarterback. The dude was a great Buckeye. And I'm rooting for him at his next stop. Really awesome kid. So definitely I'm happy, but no, I'm with you. I also don't think he felt that way. Don B, we all hate Karens, but we love my mom, right? Yes, we do. Dylan believes Nina Day. Question for Ryan Day. Why did you let Jack Sawyer swaddle you like a baby? No meat to meat contact. Good one, guys. Rod says, if Will was concussed, he would have been pulled. Think about it. Day pulled Marv in the Georgia game because he didn't pass concussion protocol. So as far as I understand, the doctor pulls you. If I don't think anybody's saying that he didn't pass concussion protocol. He did. I think people are like, I think people are saying maybe he got through concussion protocol, but was still a little woozy. It certainly seemed he was a little woozy to me. Maybe not quite himself. I don't think we'll ever know for sure. But definitely dinged up in some way. Yeah, Nancy would like to ask if he changed up the game plan because he thought Will had a concussion, which, like you go in after halftime and clearly running the ball like that's not working, and you come out and do the same thing. I mean, it would line up, right? Stephanie thinks Sam will continue the streak of great quarterback play, and I agree. I'm all in on Julian. I am with you. But I also agree with Mike. No, he's not faster than Lincoln, and he's not a better athlete than Lincoln. That is definitely what Lincoln has on him. Woody says, if Congress should pass the legislation, the teams may not lose the players, but they would be ineligible unless they adjusted the deal, and they could still leave if the money falls through. That's a great point. Adam says, your boy Sam, college football with Sam, putting the Buckeyes on blast this year, predicting 9-3 and missing the playoffs, questioning our DBs and O-line. Tell him to do better. Oh, Sam, did he really say that? 9-3, huh? I mean, it is the worst possible scenario. If everything goes wrong, I'll tell you though, I saw Sam's prediction for the rest of the Big Ten. Like, I think he's got Indiana like way up there. Michigan was way up there. I'm just totally opposite of him on almost all these teams in the Big Ten. He's got Illinois sucking. Like, he's really down on Illinois. He thinks Illinois has everybody bamboozled. I think Indiana has everybody bamboozled. So that's what's so fun about it, man. That's what's so fun about it. Oh, he has USC 10-2. So I'm pretty high on USC, I thought, until I saw that. If he has USC 10-2, I can no longer say I'm high on USC. I thought 9 games was high on USC. I think I had him at 9. I had him at 9-3. Dan says Nina's fibbing. Sam has the Buckeyes missing the playoffs and Michigan making the Big Ten championship game. USC 11 wins or something. Don thinks Illinois is fool's gold. I certainly can't argue it. They really did have a some excellent luck last year, but they also, a lot of times I attribute that to coaching. Like, we look at last year, the SC backers will say, well, USC lost 5 games by 1 score. Okay, they won 4 games by 1 score. Like, that doesn't mean anything. That means you played 9 games by 1 score and your coach was 4-5 in those games. That's what that means. On the other hand, Illinois played 5 one-score games and they won them all. What's that tell me? Brett Bielema is a savvy coach. Terry, you did a recent show about teams' wins and losses. Please review these throughout the year, maybe quarterly, to compare the results. That was a great show. That's a good idea, Terry. I will do that. I wear my losses on my sleeve, buddy. I don't hide from the L's. Illinois schedule a joke. Let's review real quick. I forget. Dylan thinks Illinois schedule's a joke. I think it sets up really good for him. Look at the big book right here. Illinois, for one, they got to take on the Buckeyes. That's not a joke. Indiana's schedule is ranked 53rd in the country, and everybody's talking about their schedule so much harder. I don't know what they're talking about. Illinois, so out of conference, they got to go to Duke. I think that's a serious matchup. Then they go to Indiana for their next big game. They host USC. That'll be a tough one. Then they host Ohio State. They got to go to Washington, and they got to go to Wisconsin. So, yeah, I mean, a little bit tough. I mean, it's tougher than Indiana's last year, that's for sure. This is Woody. I really take issue with this. So Woody says, I don't think people are taking into account coaching when they predict the Bucks falling back a bit. Day has kicked in the door. Ryan Day is a championship coach now, championship pedigree. These players have championship pedigree, and things are different when that happens. We've seen it time and time and time again. There's a certain aura of confidence, which is why I've said if he ever wins a national championship, look out. When he kicks in the door, things will be different. Waxman. Shout out to Waxman's 92-year-old pawpaw. They've sold produce 3 days a week for the past 4 weeks. A lifelong farmer and preacher. Shout out to him. That's awesome. And one final one before we sign off, guys. Linda says, Sam, you don't know what you're talking about if Ohio State will not make the playoffs, so bite your tongue. Go Buckeyes. Love it, Linda. Oh, we've got one more. AB says, Day, will you try to recruit the state of Ohio better? And I'm only bringing that up because that is actually one of the topics on tomorrow's show, as we will review Ohio recruiting. And that'll do it, guys. Thanks so much for joining me. Actually, before I go, if any of you could leave in the comments section, because I always see a pretty clear screen on this end. Was there times where the screen went real fuzzy on you, or did it look a little better than normal? Were there any hiccups? If you could leave that in the chat as I'm heading out, that would be awesome, because I can still see them after I sign off. So anyway, guys, thanks so much for joining me. I'll meet you back here tomorrow at 8:00. We will talk about a couple of commitments. Please hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed yet, if you're new to the show, I promise I will grow on you like bacteria. Appreciate you so much. Talk to you later. Jug and Bucks out.